Now that we have the evidence of Hunter Biden agreeing that yes, he failed to pay his taxes during multiple years, yes, he lied on federal firearms paperwork, and therefore, yes, he was a prohibited person in possession of a firearm during his literal Naked Gun audition per images on his laptop we were originally told was non-credible Russian disinformation. And yes, that according to a newly revealed 2017 text message threatening a Chinese business executive and Communist Party official that his dad would beat up the Chinese guy's dad unless Hunter got paid, Hunter was engaged in the exact sort of foreign influence peddling and corruption that he's long been accused of, with Joe's assistance, as the authenticity of that message is now confirmed by Hunter's lawyer. Now that we have all of that, the initial phase of the cover-up is over. It is demonstrable that Hunter Biden did do all of the things that his supposedly rabidly partisan critics alleged, and now he's skating on a plea deal that will result in only misdemeanor convictions for crimes that put others in prison on felonies. And yes, in many of those comparable high-profile cases, there were some distinguishing factors. Wesley Snipes avoided taxes and fought the charges to trial, thus his punishment was more severe. Kodak Black made false statements to possess weapons and had a prior violent criminal record, thus his punishment was more severe. But the point in all of these cases is that the crimes alleged and then demonstrated are felonies. And yet, for some curious reason, only in the case of Hunter Biden, the prosecution doesn't even seek to bring felony charges at all. The only felony remaining in play for Hunter will be deferred and not prosecuted so long as Hunter abides by the conditions of the court. The guy who's never followed a single rule in his life will get it all excused, so long as he obeys this last one. So the cover-up of that phase is now over, and the question now shifts to why such kind treatment? Who made the decision to go especially light on the president's son? Who is covering up the cover-up? As Margot Cleveland over at The Federalist writes, because while the Justice Department is quick to defend this move as somehow perfectly routine, specific DOJ personnel are shying away from taking responsibility for it. We now have something of a three-legged SpiderMan stool of blame. There's the U.S. Attorney for Delaware, David Weiss, the prosecutor who has apparently issued conflicting statements on who's ultimately in charge. There's Attorney General Merrick Garland, who says Weiss has been in charge the whole time and Garland had nothing to do with any of it. And then there's IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley, who says what Weiss and Garland have been saying publicly is much different than what he was told behind closed doors, personally working on the case. And all of the finger-pointing is an attempt to reconcile what are undeniably conflicting statements coming from the Justice Department. Either the prosecutor, David Weiss, had the full authority to pursue the case and was not influenced or interfered with in any way, or he didn't, but not both. And the problem is, at least if the whistleblower is to be believed and he has some evidence to support him, the Justice Department is saying both. During a Friday press conference, Attorney General Merrick Garland said that Weiss had that prosecutorial authority. He had free rein. It was his decision to make, and his charging decision and the plea agreement with Hunter Biden were exactly that. Weiss's decision and Weiss's decision alone.
I'd say he was given complete authority to make all decisions on his own. Mr. Weiss has since sent a letter to the House Judiciary Committee confirming that he had that authority. I don't know how it would be possible for anybody to block him from bringing a prosecution, given that he has this authority.
This statement repeats what Garland said before the Senate Judiciary Committee in March. Not only is it Weiss's decision to make, but if Weiss finds evidence of federal crimes in other jurisdictions beyond Delaware, Weiss will have the full authority to work with those U.S. attorneys to bring charges in those other districts.
The U.S. attorney in Delaware has been advised that he has full authority to make those kind of referrals that you're talking about, or to bring cases in other jurisdictions if he feels it's necessary. And I will assure that if he does, he will be able to do that.
And Garland is right when he said that Weiss himself said the same thing in writing, or as we'll get to, at least that's right in appearance. In a letter to Congress earlier this month, June 7th, David Weiss affirmed, yes, just like Merrick Garland says, I have been granted full authority over this matter, including responsibility for deciding where, when, and whether to file charges. But the IRS whistleblower says that last fall, Weiss himself told his own investigators on the case the opposite, that actually the final decision wasn't his to make at all. According to Shapley, in a meeting last October, Weiss said he is not the deciding person on whether charges are filed. As part of his efforts, Weiss said he went to the U.S. Attorney in D.C. to request a charge related to crimes Hunter committed there, as well as to California to request a charge there, but neither U.S. Attorney would charge in their districts. Weiss said he requested special counsel authority to do this himself, but was denied by the DOJ. And if you want to dismiss that story as just some unverifiable claim, well, there is some evidence to verify, because not only does Shapley say that statement was made in the presence of 3 named federal investigators, Baltimore FBI Special Agent in Charge Tom Sobocinski, Assistant FBI Special Agent in Charge Raishia Holly, and IRS Special Agent in Charge Daryl Walden, all of whom could be called to explain exactly what they heard that day. But Shapley chronicled all of these details in a meeting summary email, describing all of this in a message that is verifiably timestamped and responded to by the FBI special agent in charge of the DC field office, who said, "Thanks, Gary, you covered it all," implying general agreement with the characterization. So if we accept this whistleblower's claim, and it is backed by documentation and other witnesses, well, then the prosecutor, David Weiss, lied, and potentially not just to the public, but perhaps to Congress too, in the form of that letter, depending on which claim is false. Either he had full prosecutorial discretion, or he didn't, and someone else was pulling the strings, but not both. And David Weiss has claimed both. So which one is the lie? Was the freedom claim the lie, or was the control claim the lie? On that, let's just consider what's more likely. Is it likely that Weiss would lie to his own team of investigators for no conceivable gain? What advantage would he have in misleading the guys helping him build his own case? Or is it likely that Weiss would lie to Congress in order to maintain a certain public perception? If politics have been a primary motivator in concealing Hunter's criminality this far, why would any of that stop now? And if David Weiss did lie to Congress, well, that means Merrick Garland also lied to Congress, because he made the same claim himself about false independence in his own testimony. And now there's a theory to complete that Spider-Man circle and conclude who really deserves the finger points of blame. What if it's less Weiss and Garland lying together and more just Garland lying himself? What if Weiss didn't actually write that letter to Congress in which he claimed independence, in other words? What if someone else wrote that on his behalf and he just signed it, either through a lack of due diligence or perhaps because he was made to sign it? Sources speaking with the Federalist are skeptical that Weiss actually wrote the letter himself, specifically because it reads as though it was drafted by someone within or connected to the Justice Department's Office of Legislative Affairs, the congressional PR arm of the DOJ, essentially. The reason they suspect that is because a federal prosecutor like Weiss would be unlikely to know about the so-called Linder letter referenced in this letter's footnote. The Linder letter is a 2000 letter from the Justice Department to Congress explaining the department's positions and practices on responding to congressional oversight requests. In more plain terms, this is the technical wheelhouse of the politics of the Justice Department, not the technical wheelhouse of a prosecutor like David Weiss. Weiss submitted that letter to Congress before the Ways and Means Committee released the IRS whistleblower's testimony on Thursday, meaning the Justice Department had no knowledge that Shipley, the IRS whistleblower, had evidence to say that Weiss said the opposite to his investigators back in October, meaning whoever wrote this letter quite likely thought there was no existing evidence to contradict what they wanted to be the public perception. In fact, it's likely only Weiss himself knew that such a contradicting statement was ever uttered in the first place. So, just like asking, is it more likely that Weiss would lie to his own investigators privately or to Congress publicly, Is it more likely that Weiss would lie on his own knowing that his own contradictory statements would likely get revealed? Or is it more likely that someone in leadership put him in that unfortunate position, perhaps not even knowing that the contradictory evidence existed at all? That is what Congress wants to know. Now, Jim Jordan's Judiciary Committee has written a letter to Weiss asking for clarification, a list of everyone who worked on that mysterious letter that Weiss sent to Congress back on the 7th. James Comer's Oversight Committee is likewise asking Weiss to clarify who instructed him to sign and send that letter. And if, in fact, it can be demonstrated that someone put Weiss up to this or wrote something not by him but finalized with his signature, well, there's really only one guy above him with the sort of authority to do that, which is why House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is now strongly considering impeachment proceedings against Attorney General Merrick Garland. Yes, it's a practical impossibility to remove him from office through the Senate, even if McCarthy's House brought the charges, but the passage of those articles would follow the sort of fact-finding that would clarify exactly what happened here. Until then, I will just apply a general rule of wisdom. Always be skeptical of the guy who's constantly telling you how awesome he is. Because just like the guy who's constantly telling you how funny he is almost never is, the guy who's constantly telling you how honest and politically neutral and faithful to the rule of law he is probably isn't either.
You've all heard me say many times that we make our cases based on the facts and the law. These are not just words. These are what we live by. They are the foundation of the way we make these decisions. Agents of the FBI, as well as the DEA, the ATF, every day, often at great personal risk, protect the American people and secure its safety. Our cases are based on their work. I could not be more proud to work with them.
You earn these descriptions through demonstration, not through self-declaration. And the demonstration here is a naked drug addict constantly about to shoot himself in the foot, with Merrick Garland and company diving to take that bullet themselves instead. And actually, that's giving them way too much credit. They don't even have the courage or the decency for that. They use the country as a meat shield instead, so that we take the bullet. And then they rob our dead body's wallet to send the petty cash to Ukraine while they praise themselves for protecting us so bravely. Fittingly, as is the defense in this case, you'd have to be a crack addict to believe them. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Minds, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.